Letter 2 by Charles Lamb. Probably begun either on Tuesday, May 24 or Tuesday, May 31, 1796. Postmark, June 1. I am in such violent pain with the head that I am fit for nothing but transcribing, scarce for that. When I get your poems, and the Joan of Arc, I will exercise my presumption in giving you my opinion of 'em. The mail does not come in before tomorrow, Wednesday, morning. The following sonnet was composed during a walk down into Hertfordshire early in last summer. The Lord of Light shakes off his drowsed. Fresh from his couch up springs the lusty sun, and girds himself his mighty race to run. Meantime, by truant love of rambling led, I turn my back on thy detested walls, proud city, and thy sons I leave behind, a selfish, sordid, money-getting kind, who shut their ears when holy freedom calls. I pass not thee so lightly, humble spire, that mindest me of many a pleasure gone, of merriest days, of love and Islington, kindling anew the flames of past desire. And I shall muse on thee, slow journeying on to the green plains of pleasant Hertfordshire. Footnote, drowsed I have met with I think in Spenser. Tea's an old thing, but it rhymes with lead and rhyming covers a multitude of licenses. The last line is a copy of Bowles's, to the green hamlet in the peaceful plain. Your ears are not so very fastidious. Many people would not like words so prosaic and familiar in a sonnet as Islington and Hertfordshire. The next was written within a day or two of the last, on revisiting a spot where the scene was laid of my first sonnet that mocked my step with many a lonely glade. When last I roved these winding wood walks green, green winding walks and pathways shady sweet, ofttimes would Anna seek the silent scene, shrouding her beauties in the lone retreat. No more I hear her footsteps in the shade. Her image only in these pleasant ways meets me self-wandering where in better days I held free converse with my fair-haired maid. I passed the little cottage which she loved, the cottage which did once my all contain. It spake of days that ne'er must come again, spake to my heart, and much my heart was moved. Now fair befall thee, gentle maid, said I, and from the cottage turned me with a sigh. The next retains a few lines from a sonnet of mine, which you once remarked had no body of thought in it. I agree with you, but have preserved a part of it, and it runs thus. I flatter myself you will like it. A timid grace sits trembling in her eye, as both to meet the rudeness of men's sight, yet shedding a delicious lunar light, that steeps in kind oblivious ecstasy the characterized mind, like some still melody. Speaking most plain the thoughts which do possess her gentle sprite, peace and meek quietness, and innocent loves and maiden purity. A look whereof might heal the cruel smart of changed friends, or fortune's wrongs unkind, might to sweet deeds of mercy move the heart of him, who hates his brethren of mankind. Turned are those beams from me, who fondly yet past joys, vain loves, and buried hopes regret. Footnote, Cowley uses this phrase with a somewhat different meaning. I meant loves of relatives, friends, and sea. The next and last I value most of all. 'Twas composed close upon the heels of the last in that very wood I had in mind when I wrote, methinks how dainty sweet. We were two pretty babes, the youngest she, the youngest and the loveliest far, I ween, and innocence her name. The time has been, we two did love each other's company. Time was, we two had wept to have been apart. But when, with show of seeming good beguiled, I left the garb and manners of a child, and my first love for man's society, defiling with the world my virgin heart, my loved companion dropped a tear and fled, and hid in deepest shades her awful head. Beloved, who can tell me where thou art, in what delicious Eden to be found, that I may seek thee the wide world around? Since writing it, I have found in a poem by Hamilton of Bangor these two lines to happiness. None sober and devout, where art thou fled to hide in shades thy meek contented head? Lines eminently beautiful, but I do not remember having read 'em previously, for the credit of my 10th and 11th lines. Parnell has two lines, which probably suggested the above, to contentment. Whither art thou fled, to hide thy meek contented head? Footnote, an odd epithet for contentment in a poet so poetical as Parnell. Cowley's exquisite elegy on the death of his friend, Harvey suggested the phrase of we two. Was there a tree that did not know the love betwixt us two? So much for acknowledged plagiarisms, the confession of which I know not whether it has more of vanity or modesty in it. As to my blank verse, I am so dismally slow and sterile of ideas, I speak from my heart, that I much question if it will ever come to any issue. I have hitherto only hammered out a few independent unconnected snatches, not in a capacity to be sent. I am very ill, and will rest till I have read your poems, for which I am very thankful. I have one more favor to beg of you, that you never mention Mr. May's affair in any sort, much less think of repaying. Are we not floxenos, what do you call amists? We have just learned that my poor brother has had a sad accident. A large stone blown down by yesterday's high wind has bruised his leg in a most shocking manner. He is under the care of Cruikshanks. Coleridge, there are 10,000 objections against my paying you a visit at Bristol. It cannot be else. But in this world, 'tis better not to think too much of pleasant possibles, that we may not be out of humour with present insipids. Should anything bring you to London, you will recollect no. 7. Little Queen St. Holborn. I shall be too ill to call on Wordsworth myself, but will take care to transmit him his poem when I have read it. I saw Legrice the day before his departure, and mentioned incidentally his teaching the young idea how to shoot. Knowing him and the probability there is of people having a propensity to pun in his company, you will not wonder that we both stumbled on the same pun at once. He eagerly anticipating me, he would teach him to shoot. Poor Legrice, if wit alone could entitle a man to respect, and see he has written a very witty little pamphlet lately, satirical upon college declamations. When I send White's book, I will add that. I am sorry there should be any difference between you and Southey. Between you two there should be peace. Though, I must say I have borne him no goodwill since he spirited you away from among us. What has become of Mosheus? You sported some of his sublimities, I see, in your Watchman. Very decent things. So much for tonight from your afflicted headachy sore throaty, humble servant C. Lamb, Tuesday night. Of your Watchman, the review of Burke was the best prose. I augured great things from the first number. There is some exquisite poetry interspersed. I have reread the extract from the Religious Musings, and retract whatever invidious there was in my censure of it as elaborate. There are times when one is not in a disposition thoroughly to relish good writing. I have reread it in a more favorable moment and hesitate not to pronounce it sublime. If there be anything in it approaches to timidity, which I meant not to infer and elaborate, I meant simply labored, it is the gigantic hyperbole by which you describe the evils of existing society. Snakes, lions, hyenas, and behemoths is carrying your resentment beyond bounds. The pictures of the Simoom, of frenzy and ruin, of the whore of Babylon and the cry of the foul spirits disherited of earth, and the strange beatitude which the good man shall recognize in heaven, as well as the particularizing of the children of wretchedness. I have unconsciously included every part of it, form a variety of uniform excellence. I hunger and thirst to read the poem complete. That is a capital line in your sixth no. This dark frieze-coated, hoarse, teeth-chattering month. They are exactly such epithets as Burns would have stumbled on, whose poem on the ploughed-up daisy you seem to have had in mind. Your complaint that of your readers some thought there was too much, some too little original matter in your nose, reminds me of poor dead Parsons in The Critic. Too little incident. Give me leave to tell you, sir, there is too much incident. I had like to have forgot thanking you for that exquisite little morsel, the first Sclavonian song. The expression in the 2D, more happy to be unhappy in hell, is it not very quaint? Accept my thanks in common with those of all who love good poetry for the Braes of Yarrow. I congratulate you on the enemies you must have made by your splendid invective against the barterers in human flesh and sinews. Coleridge, you will rejoice to hear that Cowper is recovered from his lunacy, and is employed on his translation of the Italian and sea poems of Milton, for an edition where Fuseli presides as designer. Coleridge, to an idler like myself to write and receive letters, are both very pleasant. But I wish not to break in upon your valuable time by expecting to hear very frequently from you. Reserve that obligation for your moments of lassitude, when you have nothing else to do. For your loco restive and all your idle propensities, of course, have given way to the duties of providing for a family. The mail is come in, but no parcel, yet this is Tuesday. Farewell then till tomorrow. For a niche and a nook I must leave for criticisms. By the way, I hope you do not send your own only copy of Joan of Arc. I will in that case return it immediately. Your parcel is come, you have been lavish of your presents. Wordsworth's poem I have hurried through not without delight, poor Lovell. My heart almost accuses me for the light manner I spoke of him above, not dreaming of his death. My heart bleeds for your accumulated troubles, God send you through 'em with patience. I conjure you dream not that I will ever think of being repaid. The very word is galling to the ears. I have read all your musings with uninterrupted feelings of profound admiration. You may safely rest your fame on it. The best remaining things are what I have before read, and they lose nothing by my recollection of your manner of reciting 'em. For I too bear in mind the voice, the look of absent friends, and can occasionally mimic their manner for the amusement of those who have seen 'em. Your impassioned manner of recitation I can recall at any time to mine own heart and to the ears of the bystanders. I rather wish you had left the monody on C. Concluding as it did abruptly, it had more of unity. The conclusion of your R musings, I fear, will entitle you to the reproof of your beloved woman, who wisely will not suffer your fancy to run riot, but bids you walk humbly with your God. The very last words, I exercise my young novitiate thought in ministries of heart-stirring song, though not now new to me, cannot be enough admired. To speak politely, they are a well-turned compliment to poetry. I hasten to read Joan of Arc and see. I have read your lines at the beginning of 2D book. They are worthy of Milton, but in my mind yield to your realm musks. I shall read the whole carefully, and in some future letter take the liberty to particularize my opinions of it. Of what is new to me among your poems next to the musings, that beginning, my pensive Sarah, gave me most pleasure. The lines in it I just alluded to are most exquisite. They made my sister and self smile, as conveying a pleasing picture of Mrs. C checking your wild wanderings, which we were so fond of hearing you indulge when among us. It has endeared us more than anything to your good lady, and your own self-reproof that follows delighted us. 'Tis a charming poem throughout. You have well remarked that charming, admirable, exquisite are words expressive of feelings, more than conveying of ideas. Else I might plead very well want of room in my paper as excuse for generalizing. I want room to tell you how we are charmed with your verses in the manner of Spenser. And see, and see, and see, and see, and see, I am glad you resume the Watchman. Change the name, leave out all articles of news, and whatever things are peculiar to newspapers, and confine yourself to ethics, verse, criticism, or rather do not confine yourself. Let your plan be as diffuse as the Spectator, and I'll answer for it the work prospers. If I am vain enough to think I can be a contributor, rely on my inclinations. Coleridge, in reading your R musings, I felt a transient superiority over you. I have seen Priestley. I love to see his name repeated in your writings. I love and honor him almost profanely. You would be charmed with his sermons if you never read M. You have doubtless read his books, illustrative of the doctrine of necessity. Prefixed to a late work of his, In Answer to Pain, there is a preface giving an account of the man and his services to men, written by Lindsay, his dearest friend, well worth your reading. Tuesday Eve, forgive my prolixity, which is yet too brief for all I could wish to say. God give you comfort and all that are of your household. Our loves and best good wishes to Mrs. C. The postmark of this letter looks like June 1, but it might be June 7. It was odd to date it Tuesday night halfway through, and Tuesday Eve at the end. Possibly Lamb began it on Tuesday, May 24, and finished it on Tuesday, May 31. Possibly he began it on Tuesday, May 31, and finished it and posted it on Tuesday, June 7. The Hertfordshire sonnet was printed in the Monthly Magazine for December, 1797, and not reprinted by Lamb. The sonnet that mocked my step with many a lonely glade is that beginning. Was it some sweet device of fairy? Which had been printed in Coleridge's Poems, 1796. The second, third, and fourth of the sonnets that are copied in this letter were printed in the second edition of Coleridge's Poems, 1797. Anna is generally supposed to be Anne Simmons, referred to in the previous note. Concerning Floxae nos what you call emists, Canon Anger has the following interesting note. Floxae nosae is the beginning of a rule in the Old Latin grammars, containing a list of words signifying of no account, flocus being a lock of wool, and nocus a trifle. Lamb was recalling a sentence in one of Shenstone's letters. I loved him for nothing so much as his floxae nosae pilification of money. But pantisocratists was, of course, the word that Lamb was shadowing. Pantisocracy, however, the new order of common living and high thinking, to be established on the banks of the Susquehanna by Coleridge, Southey, Fable, Burnet, and others, was already dead. William Cumberland Cruikshank, the anatomist who attended Lamb's brother, had attended Dr. Johnson in his last illness. Legrice's pamphlet was A General Theorem for a Call. Declamation by Gronovius, 1796. Southey and Coleridge had been on somewhat strained terms for some time, possibly, as I have said in the previous note, owing to Southey's abandonment of pantisocratic fervor, which anticipated Coleridge's by some months. Also, to marry sisters does not always lead to serenity. The spiriting away of Coleridge had been effected by Southey in January, 1795, when he found Coleridge at the Angel in Butcher Hall Street, Vice the Salutation in Newgate Street, and bore him back to Bristol and the forlorn Sarah Fricker, and away from Lamb, journalism, and egg-hot. Mosheus was, as we have seen, Robert Lovell. No, V of the Watchman contained sonnets by him. The review of Burke's letter to a noble lord was in number I of the Watchman. The passage from Religious Musings, under the title The Present State of Society, was in number Roman 2. extending from line 260 to 357. These lines were 279-378 first ed, 264-363 second ed. The capital line in number Roman 6 is in the poem Lines on Observing a Blossom on the 1st of February, 1796. Poor Dead Parsons would be William Parsons, 1736-1795, the original Sir Fretful Plagiary in Sheridan's Critic. Lamb praises him in his essay on the artificial comedy. In number Roman 9, of The Watchmen were prose paraphrases of three Sclavonian songs, the first being Song of a Female Orphan, and the second, Song of the Haymakers. John Logan's Braes of Yarrow had been quoted in No. Roman 3 as the most exquisite performance in our language. The invective against the barterers refers to the denunciation of the slave trade in number Roman 4 of The Watchmen. Cowper's recovery was only partial, and he was never rightly himself after 1793. The edition of Milton had been begun about 1790. It was never finished as originally intended, but Fuseli completed 40 pictures, which were exhibited in 1799. An edition of Cowper's translations, with designs by Flaxman, was published in 1808, and of Cowper's complete Milton in 1810. Wordsworth's poem would be Guilt and Sorrow, of which a portion was printed in Lyrical Ballads, 1798, and the whole published in 1842. Coleridge's Monody on Chatterton, the first poem in his poems on various subjects, 1796, had been written originally at Christ's Hospital, 1790. It continued to be much altered before the final version. The two lines from Religious Musings are not the last, but the beginning of the last passage. Coleridge contributed between 300 and 400 lines to Book Roman 2. Of Southey's Joan of Arc, as we shall see later. The poem beginning My Pensive Sarah was Effusion 35, afterwards called the Aeolian Harp. And the lines to which Lamb refers are these, following upon Coleridge's description of how flitting fantasies traverse his indolent and passive brain. But thy more serious eye a mild reproof darts, O beloved woman, nor such thoughts dim and unhallowed dost thou not reject, and biddest me walk humbly with my God. The plan to resume The Watchmen did not come to anything. Joseph Priestley, 1733-1804, the theologian, at this time the object of Lamb's adoration, was one of the fathers of Unitarianism, a creed in which Lamb had been brought up under the influence of his Aunt Hetty. Coleridge, as a supporter of one of Priestley's allies, William Friend of Cambridge, and as a convinced Unitarian, was also an admirer of Priestley, concerning whom and the Birmingham riots of 1791 is a fine passage in Religious Musings, while one of the sonnets of the 1796 volume was addressed to him. Circumstances which Lamb had in mind when mentioning him in this letter. Lamb had probably seen Priestley at the Gravel Pit Chapel, Hackney, where he became morning preacher in December 1791, remaining there until March 1794. Thenceforward he lived in America. His Institutes of Natural and Revealed Religion appeared between 1772 and 1774. The other work referred to as Letters to the Philosophers and Politicians of France, newly edited by Theophilus Lindsay, the Unitarian, as an answer to Mr. Paine's Age of Reason, 1795.